Today on Console Empires, how to improve at Age of Empires 2 and climb the console ladder. In this week's video, I'm going to critique some of my ranked 1v1 gameplay, breaking down my own and my opponent's mistakes, aiming to help all of us improve. I'm bad at the game, so there should be plenty to talk about and lots to learn. Let's go! This video is aimed at new players who are learning the game for the first time on Xbox. I'm hoping to help new console players improve by sharing insights into how a more experienced player approaches learning the game. I've been playing long enough to know generally what you ought to do in a lot of situations, but this game's hard, man. It's really tough to actually execute everything cleanly in real time, so you'll see plenty of mistakes from me here too. If you're in this video and I say something critical about your gameplay, try not to take it too hard. Both of us and the viewers are here to improve, so don't be discouraged by a bit of constructive criticism. One of the best ways to learn this game is to watch replays of your losses to see where you can improve. One last bit of context before we jump in. Controller elo is a few hundred points higher than cross input. A player with the skills of a 1K on PC is going to be able to reach 1500 or higher on console right now. We'll start off at low elo and climb as we go. In this match, I'm playing Celts against the Britons on MegaRandom. My opponent was around 950 elo, but has since fallen into the 700s, so a player that's just getting started with Age of Empires 2. The typical Dark Age build can already be pretty tricky for new players, but this match has a Nomad start. On Nomad, you typically want both a TC and a dock immediately at the start. On MegaRandom though, the water can sometimes be a fake out, where you'll find that there's not actually much fish to take. It can still be worth going for fish traps though, especially if you're Malay. This generation does have a reasonable number of deep fish, so you'll see that I end up making 3 docks. Blue doesn't seem to know about build orders yet. Ideally, you'd want to be sending your initial villagers all to food, and they'd be collecting from the same animal right under the TC, then adding to wood only after you can sustain villager production at the town center. When going for water, the next 5 would go to wood. Auto Eco will send villagers to wood early, so that could be part of why his build is off. At this level though, it's totally fine to use the automation as there's so much going on to learn all at once. So where's this guy going? Alright, taking the turtles. Shorefish are actually one of the fastest sources of food in the game. A good strategy on water is to place your dock right beside a shorefish, so the builder can just start fishing without having to walk to another task. Taking a look at what I'm doing, I'm getting some fishing ships out and have a villager lead, but have started house walling the wrong side of my base. Being behind by just a few villagers in Dark Age when resources are so tight is a big disadvantage, so it's super important to try to keep the TC producing with as little idle time as possible. Taking a look at the difference in scouting here, my opponent hasn't really looked around at all beyond walking from his lumber camp to his base. Looking at mine, I've been using the buffalo to explore the map. Players don't always dock near their base on Nomad, so you should be looking for both. And even if you don't see your opponent, pay attention to where animals disappear into the fog, as that can give you a good idea of where they are. So I'd like to tell you that I'm a microgod and blocked that boar on purpose. Totally an accident there, and I almost lose that vill anyway. She lives. Those definitely look like auto farms. It always goes for the first 3 by the mill like that, before building out a pinwheel around the town center. Placing farms with the site menu can actually be useful even when you're not using automation, as it's the easiest way to quickly place a bunch of efficient farms. I was initially thinking men-at-arms into archers for this one, but I screwed up the timing and just committed to the infantry, since Celts are good at that anyway. Blue fights back with his villagers, and that can be okay against 1 or 2 men-at-arms, but not 6. 6 is enough where you should run away. Kind of a bad fight from both of us though, as I do lose my entire army. I got too greedy and just wanted the kills now. I should have pulled back and continued to harass over time. In Castle Age, I upgrade for longswords and just eat the TC. Usually, this isn't what you want to do, as longswords are almost always going to be less effective than spending your gold on knights or crossbows. However, infantry is getting a buff in the near future, so who knows, maybe longswords will become meta. Another MegaRandom, but you'll notice the generation is kinda weird. It's like Arena, but our bases are touching, and there's water along the sides. My opponent here is rated around 1050, and I'm playing Aztecs against the Mongols. Another weird start this time with 2 horses rather than a scout. Horses can't attack, and I don't think you can auto-scout with them either. We also started with a stable, and the Aztecs do get a cavalry unit, but it's not very good. Big difference from the last match already, even though we're only about 100 points higher. This player knows how to take his sheep first, and is even trying to eat them one at a time. It's a good idea to shift queue your shepherds too. If you leave them to their own devices, they tend to kill a bunch of sheep all at once, which loses more food to decay. The try house is a bit weird. Usually you just want to start with 2 and get your villagers straight onto food. And it looks like he's got a bit of a gather point issue with his lumberjacks. What I think happened here is he clicked kind of in the center of the forest. Villagers will path around the back, rather than chopping more efficiently beside the lumber camp. My mistake here going for a mill right now, when I could have been fishing. Typically, when there's water available, you want to dock first and go for the mill later, after you're up to feudal age. I think red is using auto eco again here, based on the transition to berries. It's better to take boards and not saturate the berry bushes so heavily, as they're a much slower source of food. My opponent starts off fully stonewalled in his base. Notice that shared wall? He could have deleted it and walked right into mine. Because of this, I go up to feudal on a lower population than what you usually would go for on arena. This player's scouting is much better. He's got as much of the map explored as I do, maybe a bit more, and you'll see that he's using his horses to keep an eye on what's going on behind my walls. The corner mining camp isn't ideal, but it's also not the worst. I actually placed mine the same way this game, so something we could both improve on. What you want to do is go for a one-tile gap on the long side, and what you want to avoid is making a Tetris camp where it's tucked into an inside corner. I've got a second mill down there for deer. I mill the deer a lot. Some players prefer to push the deer in with their scout, but that means you're sacrificing time actually scouting, and it's a bit tricky to do, especially with a controller. When taking deer with Aztecs, you can get away with just 3 villagers instead of the 4 you would normally use, since Aztec villagers can carry more food, which is also kind of an underrated farm bonus. But you see how many farms my opponent is already on? Taking more of the food on the map can free up that wood for other things. Up to Castle Age, and what are we going to make? Monks. With Aztecs, you have to go monks. They're probably the best monks in the game. Each monastery tech gives your monks an extra 5 HP. They get seriously tanky when fully upgraded. So, Red's got more fishing ships out than me right now, and has the villager lead. He could improve even more here by taking the deep fish rather than the shore fish. While shore fish are great to collect with a villager, ships actually gather from deep fish a lot faster, especially if you can get your dock out on a peninsula where it's closer to the deep fish. Neither of us go for navy in this game, but transporting around his wall could have been a good play if I'd realized the opportunity. My one mangonel attacking uphill here isn't doing great damage to that gate, but I do break in eventually. The defensive castle's another good play. I don't see it yet, and I lose my eagles as soon as I break in. The castle forces me to try attacking from another angle. Better late than never on my fishing ships, but at this point I should have redocked also, as my ships are traveling a pretty long distance to drop off their food. Not sure what's going on with my eagles here. I could pretend I was trying to dodge the arrow fire, but it seems like it's just a weird pathing thing. Rewalling here is another smart play from Red, but I'm being annoying with my monks here trying to convert his builders. Just going with a plain wall instead of a gate might have been better, as he's not really gaining anything from having a gate there, as it just leads to a section that's walled off. But placing the gate does fill the hole in faster. Gating the section of wall that leads into my base might have been a stronger play. Light cav are exactly what you want to go for, as they're great against monks. Attack upgrades would have made them even better. So I've moved around to pressure from the other side since he's got his castle up. A stronger defense would have been rewalling behind, either with more stone walls or just throwing a building up behind the gate. He does eventually come over with a decent amount of army and kills all of my siege while I'm not looking. When I finally do notice, I get a few conversions and am able to push into his base. Targeting conversions with monks on a controller feels kind of awkward at first, but I think monks are actually going to be really strong once players get used to it. What I'm doing here is using selection filters to go for separate conversions. I target the entire group on an enemy unit, hit B and down to remove a monk from my selection, and then target the rest to the next unit, repeating until each monk has its own target. Another technique is to press right on your D-pad to select each monk. By default, the camera will snap to each one, making it pretty challenging, but this can be disabled in the settings. Actually getting a few kills here with converted cav archers. 500 IQ play to not get those upgrades though, limiting the damage I can do. Upgrades are one of the big areas where Red could improve. Even though this game goes to Imperial Age and he gets Mangudai, they do almost nothing without upgrades, despite being one of the strongest unique units in the game. Oh yeah, Imperial Age Militia Rush, most OP strat in the game. It might look like I'm flexing here, but that's really not what's happening. I just forgot that I changed some of my production shortcuts, but not all of them. So you can hold Y and D-pad left or right to change what your building is going to produce. I had some of my barracks set to Eagle, but not all of them. So just spamming Y on the group queued up a bunch of militia too. Bet you didn't expect to see militia fighting Mangudai when you clicked this video. Whole bunch of Hussar coming in here. Normally a great unit, especially against monks, but they're not great against eagles, and normally in Imperial Age pop space is a concern. You don't want to make too many trash units when there's still gold available, but that's not really an issue here because we're nowhere near 200 pop. Another big area where Red could improve would just be continuing to add more economy. A lot of new players get to a point and just stop making villagers. It's good to keep producing until you have at least 100. When going for an expensive unit like Paladin, you might even want as many as 150. GG. In the next game, I'll have to defending as my first rush. There's a noticeable shift around 1200, where you're going to start facing players who are a bit more aggressive. At this level, they're starting to figure out build orders and unit counters, but still struggling with execution. We're looking at poles versus slabs in this match on Arabia. Whenever I see Arabia pop up, I'm always like, oh man, it's tryhard time, let's go! Poles have a couple of really strong abilities. They have cheap knights, good farms, and earn gold from mining stone, and their villagers heal over time. My opponent was around 1150 at the time, but has since climbed into 1300s. He's playing slabs here. Like the poles, slabs have a strong farming bonus, and similar to the folwark, military buildings give the slabs more pop space. With poles, I could have built my houses closer to the TC, as you want to farm around the folwarks to take advantage of the food bonus. An improvement here would be keeping his scout in the black more. Running across areas already explored is a waste of scouting time at the start of the game. I like the boar house. It's a good move to help time the lore to when your sheep's gonna run out. And look at that lore, dead center under the TC. My mill kinda sucks here. It should have been a little further out to touch more of the berries, but it'll work fine for the farming bonus later. Another solid lore from red, and pretty well timed too. Kind of a lot of villagers on berries, especially for when you still have sheep. Try not to send more than 4 to berries unless you're Franks who collect faster or Portuguese to get the free wood. So I'm not looking at my scout at all here and waypoint it right into the TC. Scouting is an area where I can definitely stand to improve. If I was paying attention, not only would my scout have survived, but I could have stolen those 3 sheep too. Keeping sheep that far out from the TC is pretty risky. A bit of separation can help your villagers to eat them one by one, but this is way too much space. I hit him with the boo taunt and he sends back the 11. Chirping in chat is one of the things I miss about playing on PC. The taunts menu is okay, but it's kind of hard to use. I wish you could set favorites or customize the keybinds. Red's got a pretty good building wall going here. I try to use palisades against the resources rather than larger buildings because blocking off so much stone is kind of like laming your— Revenge! Revenge! No, didn't even get 1 HP off a scout. Sad times. You ready to see the worst scout rush that you've ever seen? Here I come. He doesn't have spears? This is gonna be sick. Just kidding. So we're gonna hang out here, nothing. Nothing. There we go. Still a bad move not to just commit sooner here, but what happened is I got housed. So I clicked away to look at my eco, which I probably shouldn't have done at this moment anyway. I had thought all my scouts were on the same control group, and well, they weren't. So I'd used the minimap to just click that group behind his woodline, thinking they were all waiting out of sight, not just, standing there making small talk with the enemy lumberjacks. So I'm somehow still housed, and still not controlling my scouts, and still haven't gotten any kills. But, I mean, at least it cost him idle time, right? Here comes the pointy boy, and doink, now I'm paying attention. If you're picking up on the trend here, I tend to focus way too much on my eco and not enough on unit control, both here and when I lost my starting scout in the Dark Age. Red does the right thing here and heads straight to my base to counterattack. He singles out a lone villager right away, who somehow lives. Since I knew he was also going for scouts, I'd already placed a spear by my wood, who gets a free hit here, but I should have just walled, and I end up taking more damage because I didn't. With a small number of unupgraded scouts, you can fight them back with villagers, but I shouldn't be chasing this far. If I was good at the game, I could have just small walled my wood when he pulled away and avoided any losses. Another villager out of position for me, but anti-micro saves me here. When your units are doing damage, just let them fight. Too much clicking can reduce DPS and cause you to miss out on kills that your army might have gotten had they just been left alone. Not finishing off villagers against the poles hurts too, because they regenerate. Those 2 builders that he nearly picked off won't be easy snipes when he comes back later. I kind of panicked and sent my scouts home to deal with this. Wrong play. Continuing to pressure at his base would have been better, especially because I have more spears just standing there at home not doing anything, and by the time my army gets back, he only had 1 scout left anyway. Continuing the back and forth, I head in to raid his second woodline, psych. Not to beat a dead scout, but I'm not looking at the fight again. Up to Castle Age now, and I'm still just harassing a bit as I switch into night production. At this point, my replay file glitched out and ended the game, but we can watch the rest from my point of view. I'm trying to set up a control group queue here. If you hold RT and LB, you can then select a group with the D-pad to queue units into. This is super helpful to keep up production without looking back, something I obviously need to work on. Alright, got a good mass of knights built up, let's go. No, that's a lot of pikes, running away. We both decide to go for forward castles in the middle to control the map, and he's added in bowyards. I panic at this and queue up the pikeman upgrade, but then never make any pikes. The pikeman upgrade is expensive, so this could have hurt me. This fight ends up being where Red throws the game. He does deny my TC and immediately drops a castle in my face, but I just have too many knights, so there's no way that's going up. He takes big losses here, and I have enough of a ball of knights left at this point to just roll through the pikes he has at home. I could have played better in this match by prioritizing stone earlier, both to take advantage of the bonus and to get the Pole's unique tech. I paid way more for these knights than I needed to. Good game though. This match had some of the best back and forth fighting that I've played yet on console. Have you noticed yet that MegaRandom is my favorite map? Not a particularly random generation for this match, pretty much just a snowy Arabia, where the wood is sort of a bit sparse. We've got Teutons against Mongols in this one. My opponent's 1250, but has climbed to 1300 since we played. MegaRandom usually has a lot of hunt, so Mongols are a strong pick as they have a very strong hunt bonus. These sheep are pretty far from the TC again. Less of a risk this early unless you're playing against Vietnamese, as they know where you are immediately at the start of the game, but he could be scouting with them. Not the greatest lore from Red, but hey, he's Mongols, so at least they'll eat it faster. Kill the scout, no, he escapes. We started off with 2 scouts each this time. Normally, you don't want to engage with scouts in the Dark Age, as they're weaker than a loomed villager. But with 2, sometimes you'll see players being more aggressive. A coordinated attack in team games can be particularly devastating. Imagine 8 scouts showing up in your base in the Dark Age. Yikes. Keeping my streak alive here and losing my scout to the TC. Ouch. But hey, at least I've got a spare this time. So he's got a big house wall going, but it's kind of too close to the TC, and there's a hole up there at the top. Found the wood line finally, and wow, that's a lot of spears. He's made a bunch of them, so I try adding in skirmishers, as skirms do some bonus damage against spearmen. Nice little raid here as he picks off a couple of my farmers. And wow, he's just now getting loom. I probably could have gotten more value earlier if I had thought to check that. So he's ahead now in population by way of the 3-0 KD, and my skirms aren't doing as much as I'd hoped. Scouts shred skirmishers, so he cleans up my army easily. But we're up to castle and I'm coming right back with knights. Still quite a few spears there, but I've got +2 already, so I'm able to get some kills. He's going for cav archers, but he forgets to get bodkin. I engage here, but overreact to the spears and run away. Knights can melt feudal spears. I should have just fought there. But heading over to the woodline worked out as well because I find a ton of villager kills and now have a solid population lead. Solid counterattack as he gets some kills and forces me to bring my knights home to deal with it. Still no bodkin at this point and he's outnumbered, so it's the right move to run away. I should have chased him down more aggressively. Another big fight here. I had enough army that I could have denied this castle if I had gotten there sooner, but at least rack up some more villager kills. At this point, I have a pretty decent lead, being ahead by 30 population, but the score was fairly close, and I didn't think I was winning at the time. There's actually a point later on where I almost resign. Looking back home, I'm realizing that I don't have nearly enough farms and need a castle as I'm thinking about going imp. He sees my castle going up, but I've got army there to defend it. He manages to lure me back into his castle fire, and I do lose some of my knights here as I was adding farms instead of looking at them. He tries to do it a second time, but I am paying attention this time around. So we both end up with 2 castles up at home and similar army numbers. But I still have a huge villager lead and don't even realize it. Huge raid from Red. He does have some upgrades now and does some good damage here, but look at the queues. He's got literally nothing in queue because he's just tunnel visioned right here on this army. I've got a whole bunch of stuff queued up and I'm ahead by 40 villagers, but my army isn't here fighting and the KD is super close again. Even though my opponent isn't making a ton of eco, he's pressuring enough to cause me to panic and make mistakes. He's got 8 farms. 8! Who is this guy? Huang? But who needs farms when you're shredding my entire wood line? This is the moment where I almost call it. My castle gets down to about 50 HP here, right after losing all those villagers. I was pretty tilted, and seeing it fall would have been enough. Imagine quitting when you have 100+ villagers against 50. It can be hard to remember in-game, but know that if your opponent is playing more aggressively than you, you usually have an eco lead. It might not feel like you're winning when you're under so much pressure, but you are ahead, and if you can survive to the late game, you'll win by having a greater economy. Take another look at the queue here. See how I've got a bunch of buildings with just a few things producing from each? That's what you want to go for. 11 pikemen queued up at 1 barracks is going to do nothing against 40 cavalier. When you get to a point that there's more than a few units in each queue, just add more buildings. Something I could have done better here would be getting conscription sooner to produce even faster. Conscription might be the best tech in the game. It's worth getting as soon as you reach Imperial Age, unless you're producing trebs from your castle. Alright, so we're in the 1300s for this match. I play like trash here and end up losing the game. It kinda hurts to feature this one, but there are some moments in this match we can learn from. My first mistake was that I went into this one feeling cocky. I was on a 9-0 streak in my placement matches and felt like I couldn't lose. I had decided before the game that I was going to try playing monks. Monks are my favorite unit, but they're hard to manage, especially with the controller. There's actually a couple new features that help with controller monk micro, but I didn't know about most of them at the time I played this game. I got Koreans against Lithuanians. Koreans are pretty unremarkable on Arabia, and I don't play them very much. They're currently one of the worst performing civilizations, with a win rate of around 46%. I'm not trying to say this was a civ loss, it's totally because I played poorly. But if you're trying to learn the game and climb, it can be helpful to pick just a couple strong civs and focus on mastering them. For me, it's more fun to just play random, even if it costs me a game every so often. As far as monks go, Koreans are just okay. The Korean monastery is missing Redemption, Atonement, Heresy, and Illumination, and they don't have any monk-specific bonuses, but they do get free armor upgrades on their archers, so I decided to go for crossbows too, another micro-intensive unit. So if you're keeping score, in this match I've got a bad mindset, a questionable unit choice, and a civilization that I don't love. 3 notable disadvantages before even starting the game. Look at this guy pushing deer with his controller. Freaking Chad, man. Should've just GG'd right here. You can see how much more of the map I've been able to explore because I didn't push my deer. Green is slow to get his barracks up and doesn't have the wood to place his feudal age buildings right away, so he's missing out on the opportunity to capitalize on his faster uptime. Nice work with the scouting though to stop and watch what I'm up to. I end up making the stable here and switch later because I was feeling indecisive about going for archers. I should have just committed one way or the other. Going scouts into skirms is a normal strategy, but that's not what I do here. It's a full tech switch into crossbow, which is weaker than opening archers in feudal as I won't have built up as much of a mass. Ideally, when going crossbow, you're looking to already have an army massed up by the time you hit castle, so you can just get the upgrades and attack as soon as you advance. We're both making spearmen already. I haven't seen any scouts or even a stable from him yet, but I've just assumed he would go scouts because nobody has attacked me with feudal age archers yet. And I attack move right into a building. Sick raid, bro. Better than just standing around like I did in that other match though. And true to form, I run right under the TC, but he doesn't react and I come out the other side unscathed. Running around his base a bit looking for damage, but he's got enough spears to fend me off. He comes in for the counterattack and loses his scout right away attacking my house, even though the walls aren't finished and I have a hole. He gets in and does a bit of damage, but we're tied up at 2-2 in kills. I was thinking I'd be sneaky and place my ranges at the back of my base to hide the tech switch, but end up chasing him that way so he sees it anyway. So he gets to Castle Age first and has an 8 villager lead. I add a monastery thinking I can defend with conversions from behind my walls while I boom and catch up, but there's that hole. And the monk goes down. Trying to micro the crossbows here, and it goes okay. I do manage to kill his knights. If I'd just committed to archers and feudal, I'd have so many more right now and would have been in a much stronger position. Moving out across the map now, we've got a couple of just passing moments, but he notices first and does easily clear up my small number of crossbow. I do start collecting the relics, aiming to deny the Lithuanian bonus, but end up letting him get most of them anyway. He's got +4 attack on his knights already, +2 armor and bloodlines, night and day compared to my previous opponents who were forgetting to get their upgrades at all. He should have attacked me sooner, but is just focusing on booming. He ends up winning the game regardless, but it is a mistake to give me a chance to recover and build up my army. So I somehow managed to get about 50 crossbows up despite the rough start. I kill a few of his knights and force him to retreat into his base. But he's got upgraded skirms, so he probably should have just stood his ground rather than retreating, and I still can't get a conversion. Trying to get some picks over the wood line here, but he's already an imp and immediately goes for bracer and archer armor. Getting these upgrades as soon as you age up is exactly what you want to be doing. He's capitalizing on his advantage here, unlike what happened in feudal age when he couldn't afford a stable. So I lose my army again, but he's still not pressuring my base, so I don't really feel like I've lost yet. He's got over 60 upgraded skirmishers, while I'm still making crossbow. The elite skirms unsurprisingly win the final battle as I imp into GG. He did get Faith though, which is an expensive tech, so chalk that up for a win on my side of the board. He apparently felt like my monks were a lot more effective than the 0 conversions I actually managed to get. He could have played even stronger by keeping the pressure on earlier and making more production buildings later on. While his Q does look better than mine, he's still got more than 3 in each building. That's enough that it's worth making more. I might have been able to fight on by going for siege and towers. Koreans do get a bonus on their mangonels and free tower upgrades. Skirmishers wouldn't have been able to do anything against that. But he's up to +6 on the Cavalier, and I was so far behind economically, it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe I'll get him next time. For this match, we've got Celts against Portuguese on Mediterranean. My opponent was around 1375 going into this game, and I'm in the low 1400s. At the moment, 1400 is pretty high on the Xbox ladder. I've managed to climb into the top 100 on the leaderboard, despite the laundry list of mistakes on display in this video. Currently at this level, players understand how to play the game, but don't necessarily have the execution, consistency, or depth of game knowledge that even an average PC player would. I do expect console skill to climb, but it's going to take a little while. Pretty typical start for Red here. 2 houses, couple of cows out scouting, he's found his resources quickly, but doesn't go for a lumber camp, he's chopping the straggler. I am again scouting like trash, and have to send a villager into the void in search of my wood line. I've got an early villager lead in this one, but we're both making a crucial mistake with our builds by not prioritizing wood enough to get a dock out as soon as possible. Red even loses one to the boar. His start certainly has room to improve, but this is the highest rated player I've faced, so he must be doing something right later on. I'm Omega housed right now, and I think I've got Loom researching ahead of that villager in queue, but it's not. Red's waypoint scouting for now, but we'll get into some shenanigans in a minute. And he's got the right idea going for gold into galleys. Big oof on this fishing ship. I misclicked and it's not actually fishing. Lamer boy! Trying to steal my cows while I have no villagers under the TC to shoot him with. Oh no, quick gate! As it turns out, I'm in fact not the Viper and his scout escapes. I open with galleys since I'm up first. Galleys kill fish faster and can out-micro fire ships if you have a numbers advantage, but I'm housed again. Water maps are fun like that. The extra production from your docks throws off the sense of timing for houses. I'm looking around for his fish and other docks, but it turns out there's just the one. He eventually queues up some ships, but then decides to cancel them and just let me have the water. So you'd think I'd have learned by now? This is the 3rd game I've shown in this video where my wallers are in danger. This one gets cornered into the trees and goes down. If you want to be a better player than me, build the wall with more villagers or send a spearman to protect them. Red had to make a lot of farms since he gave up on water, so I'm ahead now, but I'm floating some gold as I stopped producing ships. I should probably have continued to produce something, as he has no military and isn't walled at all. Maybe a couple of archers, or even just being annoying with my starting scout, which is standing inside of his base, so I should know that it's open and that he doesn't have any military. I could have been doing anything just to keep the pressure up and secure my position, but transitioning into the next stage is one of the weaker aspects of my game. In both late castle and late feudal, I tend to ease off, to focus on getting my resources to click up. This is definitely something I'm working to improve on. We're both going for knights, and you can see he's already researching bloodlines on the way up. Celts don't get bloodlines, but knights are still knights, and they don't get thumb ring either. I was planning on adding in some of the Celts' faster attacking siege, but that doesn't end up working out. I forget to make a gate on the right side of my base, which ends up kind of weirdly working out later as my villagers path the long way around the lake, distracting my opponent and giving me the idea to place a sneaky castle. My queuing is off here with 3 knights behind husbandry and 1 stable. I should be using both. Neither of us know it, but Red's got the advantage here. He's got upgrades and bloodlines and is coming at me with 6 knights, while I've only got 4 and no upgrades yet. If we fought here, he'd easily win. We hilariously don't see each other, and I head into his base thinking I'm attacking first. I deny the TC going up, and he immediately sends his army home to defend. Look at all those kills. He should have just committed to the attack and at least done some damage to my base at the same time. Running home from so far away is just giving me the time to keep raiding and get a ton of value from what was a weaker army. He does eventually chase me down and kill those first 4 knights, but by then I have reinforcements and I'm getting even more kills. I've got more units now and better upgrades, so at this point the fights are snowballing for me easily. If I had seen that castle going up, I probably could have denied it, and that might have been the game. I made a bunch of pikes after seeing how many knights Red was making, but he never actually gets into my base. For now, he's just staying at home trying to defend, and he eventually does kill my army. We've got similar numbers in this fight, but he's got more HP and now organ guns, and that's making a big difference. I'm feeling overconfident here, thinking I can just close this one out with a castle drop. I should have dropped it earlier when I had more of an advantage, but by waiting, he's got more knights and organs out. I gave him the ability to deny it, and my bad quick walls aren't helping. Even if I'd gotten them up though, the organ guns could have just shot my villagers over them anyway. The momentum is really shifting now. He's taken 3 fights in a row and he's pressing towards my base, but I'm an imp and he runs into a wall of halbs, so crisis averted. I could have added a couple more docks by now to take the rest of the fish a bit more efficiently, but at least I remember to patrol my ships around the shorelines for more map vision. So these are those villagers I mentioned earlier. I'm trying to collect the gold in the eastern corner of the map, but they're taking the scenic route. I would have thought this was a bad fight. Challenging gunpowder uphill with infantry under castle fire sounds like the wrong move, but I win the battle and take his castle down, so I guess it was the right decision? Feels like it shouldn't have been. Red's adding elite skirm now, which is weird against the Celts, but maybe he's thinking he wants to counter my halbs? Halbs aren't really something you need to counter. Organ guns should already melt them without needing to waste resources teching into anything else like crossbow or elite skirm. I'm getting Furor Celtica here because I didn't realize that it only applies to siege workshop units, not any siege units. I don't think I even have a siege workshop anymore, and it does nothing for trebs. But I've got another great journey underway, and he's chasing my villagers around the map this time, letting my monk sneak right past the other direction with a relic. So I've lost a ton of fights now, and I'm way behind in KD, but I'm at 200 pop, and Red still hasn't been able to actually get into my base with any units beyond his starting scout. He's been focused too much on countering what I'm doing, and not enough on his own strengths. There's no need to research halberdier to counter my light cav, especially when I've already switched into elite woad. If you've got 3,000 gold, just make more organs. So before you dive into the comments to triumphantly proclaim that all console players are trash, remember that the Xbox release is still new. A large portion of the controller ladder is made up of genuinely new players, or people returning to the game for the first time in years. Even at what's currently a high elo, players are still figuring out how to play with a controller. For anyone who might find this video in the future, the skill level has likely risen considerably since I played these games. Look at how good a 1K is on PC these days. Console skill is likely to improve just the same. I hope I could help you learn something about climbing the console ladder in this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next week.